News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. Here's your closing bell for this Monday afternoon on Wall Street. A holiday-shortened week. Stocks ending the quarter at all-time highs. The S&P 500 looking at its best quarter since December of 2023, driven by hopes of Federal Reserve interest rate cuts. And, of course, we bring you the closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 gained 32 points. NASDAQ gained 96. The Dow gained 274 points. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.24%. The 2-year yield at 3.72%. Apple shares extend gains 2% to a session high in regular trading after reports that it may be considering using outside AI to fix Siri. It would be a major reversal for Apple, which has not made a final decision, but is said to be weighing whether to power Siri with Anthropic or OpenAI technology. Shares of Apple rose 2% in the regular session. President Trump has just signed an executive order terminating the Syria Sanctions program. The order removes sanctions on Syria while maintaining sanctions on former leader Bashar al-Assad and his associates. The White House says that should help stabilize the country. The move was widely anticipated after President Trump briefly met with Syria's new leader, Ahmed al-Shara, who led forces that overthrew Assad in December. Ahmed al-Shara was a member of al-Qaeda in Iraq and fought for 3 years in the Iraqi insurgency. American forces captured and imprisoned him from 2006 to 2011. The European Union is willing to accept a trade agreement with the U.S. that includes a 10% universal tariff on many of the bloc's exports, but still wants the U.S. to commit to lower rates on key sectors like pharmaceuticals, alcohol, semiconductors, and commercial aircraft. The EU is also pushing the U.S. for quotas and exemptions to effectively lower Washington's 25% tariff on automobiles and car parts and its 50% tariff on steel and aluminum. Republican Party leaders are trying to overcome internal fights over President Trump's tax and spending package as Democrats launch more attacks to exploit the divisions. Republican Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina called out the president's advisors.
But I'm telling the president that you have been misinformed. You supporting the Senate mark will hurt people who are eligible and qualified for Medicaid.
Tillis says the bill breaks campaign promises that Republicans and President Trump made to not cut Medicaid. He is not running for re-election. Even if the bill does pass the Senate, it still has to go back to the House to consider any changes the Senate made. The series of votes on the amendments is called a vote-a-rama. Bloomberg government reporter Jack Fitzpatrick says this one is different.
Unlike the other vote-a-ramas we've seen this year where they were negotiating possible changes to a framework, this is a real bill. So the Democrats see a major opportunity to poke holes in the legislation, to maybe come up with something bipartisan.
Hear more from Jack Fitzpatrick on the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. President Trump wants it done by the end of the week. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says he thinks they'll get it done in time.
Everyone believes that this is a start. So it's an 11% cut in non-discretionary spending, and we're going to go from there.
You can hear Secretary Bessent's full conversation with Bloomberg's Sonali Basak on the Bloomberg Talks podcast. President Trump says Fed Chair Jay Powell and, quote, his entire board should be ashamed of themselves for not lowering the federal funds rate. Trump extended his Fed criticism to the board in a social media post on Truth Social, declaring that the interest rate should be 1% or better. Bloomberg's Dan Flatley says the message throws more uncertainty into the conversation.
Things are constantly in motion in the Trump administration. And so, what we heard from Secretary Bessent this morning would seem to indicate that there may be some folks on the board right now that they're looking at that Trump is interested in. But now we have this Truth Social post that would seem to indicate otherwise, that maybe he's dissatisfied with any of the candidates.
Included in the post is an image of an open letter addressed to Jay Powell, reiterating Trump's criticism that Powell has, quote, cost the USA a fortune. Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic says tariffs may cause an incremental impact on prices, leading to more persistent upward pressure on inflation. Jury deliberations quickly hit a snag at the Sean Diddy Combs sex trafficking trial. The panel of 8 men and 4 women began their closed-door discussions, and barely an hour later, the 4-person alerted the judge that a juror was having trouble following the judge's instructions. The judge reminded them to follow what he said. That's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.